World leaders and veterans come to the beaches of northern France to remember the D-Day landings 70 years ago. The invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe by Allied forces was a turning point in the Second World War. Well, also in Normandy, there was a meeting on the sidelines of the commemorations between Russia's President Putin and the Ukrainian President-elect Petro Poroshenko. Let's speak to James Kirchick. He's a fellow from the Washington-based think tank, the Foreign Policy Initiative. And James, also a Ukraine specialist. James, thank you very much for your time. Petro Poroshenko says he hopes and expects that in earnest on Sunday, talks between Ukraine and Russia will begin. Is he, the Ukrainian president-elect, in a weaker position because he would need a peace deal sooner than Russia?
I mean, I think he's obviously in a very weak position, and I wouldn't be very optimistic. Vladimir Putin isn't even acknowledging that his government is providing arms and support to these rebels, and there are also Russian agents in the eastern part of the country as well. So it's hard to resolve this problem when the Russians don't even acknowledge that they have any role to play in solving it.
Diplomatically, do you see any significance diplomatically in the fact that Russia is only, and I say only, sending its former ambassador to attend the inauguration of Petro Poroshenko in a few hours' time?
I think it's a good symbolic move. It's unclear whether or not this represents a full resumption of diplomatic relations. That's obviously a very important step. There hasn't been an ambassador in the country for months. So we'll see where it goes from here, but I wouldn't invest too much in that. It's important to recall, for months the Russians have been claiming that the authorities in Kiev are a fascist junta, they're an illegitimate government, it's a coup. And we've seen something of a back down in the rhetoric from Russia. But there needs to be substantial action.
In terms of the anger we see from pro-Russian separatists in the east of Ukraine, how does Mr. Poroshenko go about making sure that they are happy in the longer term with pledging their allegiance to Kiev rather than to Moscow?
Well, it's a very difficult question. I mean, there are obviously valid concerns that people in the East have. The government, it's been too centralized, too much of the money and authority is going to Kiev, and they need to fix that problem. But, you need to keep in mind that the vast majority of people in eastern Ukraine, they want a united Ukraine, and that includes Russian speakers. And we should not lose sight of that fact, and that the people who are causing these problems, it's a small armed minority, and they're really taking the law into their own hands. So he's going to have to do a lot to, alleviate the situation. But in the short term, it's going to be very difficult because if he makes moves, in terms of physical force, trying to remove these people from government buildings and taking down these roadblocks, there's going to be violence. And there's been lots of violence and lots of deaths. And it could create the sort of pretext that the Russians could claim for further intervention, just like they claimed a pretext for intervening in Crimea 3 months ago.
James Kirchick, thank you very much indeed for your time.